Roger is a specialist exhibitor, author, and lecturer in the 20th century United States stamp production and postal history. Additional studies and exhibits include the U.S. embossed stamp revenue paper and production and postal history of post-World War II U.S. definitive issues, specifically the Prominent American and the Great American series. He's active in organized philately as an elected governor, treasurer, and past president of the Collectors Club. He is board chairman of the United States Stamp Society, serving since 1990, and past member of the Smithsonian's Institutions Council of Philatelists. Appointed to the Board of Trustees of the American Philatelic Research Library in 2005. He is currently APRL past president and recipient of the Collectors Club Alfred E. Lichtenstein Award, the APS Lift Award for Research. He's a member of the Westfield Stamp Club, Jockey Club, and a fellow of the Royal Philatelic Society, London, and a signer of the Distinguished Roll of Philatelists. That's a lot of words, but that says a lot. That last one is probably the highest recognition, award in the hobby. So we're just so grateful to have Roger, who's going to be speaking tonight on the 1907 Jamestown issue. So Roger, you're on if you want to share your screen with us.
Okay, let's see if we can do this.
Yep.
Bear with me 1 second. How's that?
It's coming. Yep. We're good.
See it? Good.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Okay, if everybody could mute.
Okay, we'll get going. Motivated by dreams of wealth, by establishing a permanent settlement in the New World, on May 13, 1607, 104 English colonists landed on the shores of the James River off the Chesapeake Bay in a region occupied by the Powhatan Indian Confederacy. They constructed a small triangular fort, establishing the colony of Virginia, naming the settlement Jamestown. It was the first permanent English colony in North America. But rather than the gold and the silver they had sought, they suffered disease, malnutrition, drought, poor leadership, conflicts with the Powhatan Confederacy, and many deaths. By 1614, however, they capitalized on the viability of tobacco as a cash crop. And this breakthrough redirected the colony's development, labor needs, and sustainability. John Rolfe was a Jamestown colonist, remembered today as the man who married the Indian princess Pocahontas. Actually, Rolfe was a primary force behind the inadvertent success of the colony. Like many young Englishmen, Rolfe smoked tobacco, a popular fad ever since the Spanish had brought back Nicotiana tabacum from the Caribbean. Virginia Indians also used tobacco, but it was a different species, Nicotiana rustica, described as awful stuff, weak with a biting taste. After arriving in Jamestown in 1610, Rolfe talked a shipmaster into bringing him some of the Nicotiana tabacum seeds from Trinidad and Venezuela. 6 years later, Rolfe returned to England with Pocahontas. He also brought his first big shipment of Virginia tobacco. When Rolfe's shipment arrived, it is estimated that London already had over 7,000 tobacco houses. At a time, the hated Spain was the sole source of tobacco. Spanish tobacco was expensive and its use somewhat unpatriotic. London tobacco houses were thrilled by the sudden appearance of an English alternative, Virginia leaf. They clamored for more, and ships from London tied up to the Jamestown dock and took as many half-ton barrels of rolled up tobacco leaves as they could. The primary goal of the Virginia Company of London's charter by James I was to establish settlements on the coast of North America, obtain gold and silver, and find a route through North America, then sail with Virginia's silver to the colony's ultimate reason for existence, trade with China. As a business venture, Jamestown was a disaster. Despite the profits of tobacco, its backers suffered heavy losses. Nonetheless, the colony left its mark, inaugurating democracy in 1619 with the first elected legislative assembly in the New World, the House of Burgesses. As the 300th anniversary of the 1607 Jamestown founding neared, the Association for the Preservation of Virginia Antiquities called for a celebration. Leaders in Norfolk, including James Thompson, publisher of the Norfolk Dispatch, began an unrelenting campaign to champion their city. In 1902, the Jamestown Exposition Company was incorporated. The company decided to locate an international exposition on a mile-long frontage at Sewell's Point, a location almost equidistant from the cities of Norfolk, Portsmouth, Newport News, and Hampton. While hard to reach by land, it was favorably accessible by water, which ultimately proved a great asset. Nearby Hampton Roads was the home of the North Atlantic Fleet, and President Theodore Roosevelt was eager to utilize the celebration to display the nation's growing naval power. He supported the Exposition Company request for $1 million federal loan to be repaid by a lien on 40% of the gate receipts. On March 3, 1905, Roosevelt issued a proclamation noting congressional support for the exposition, stating, quote, "An act to provide for celebrating the birth of the American nation by an international naval, marine, and military celebration in the vicinity of Jamestown on the waters of Hampton Roads. The event to be commemorated, inviting foreign nations to participate by sending their naval vessels and military organizations." They were originally conceived as the Jamestown Tercentennial and Naval and Marine Exhibition. The official name became the 1907 Jamestown Exposition. So let's go to the fair. As previously noted, the exposition was located on a mile-long frontage on Sewell's Point. New roads had to be built and two existing Norfolk streetcar lines were extended to the site. The eastern portion of the newly built Tidewater Railway was also rushed into service, and the local Norfolk Southern Railway agreed to add substantial passenger service. On the shore, new piers were constructed to move supplies to exposition buildings, and hotels were built to handle the millions of anticipated exposition visitors. Each state was asked to contribute a building to the exhibit so they could exhibit their state's history and industry and serve as embassies for visitors from their states. 26 states obliged. The 340-acre site included a 122 by 60-foot relief model of the Panama Canal, a Wild West animal show, a wild show, and a Wild West animal show, a recreation of the then recent San Francisco earthquake. The railroads put on elaborate displays. The Chesapeake and Ohio Railroad displayed its entire prestigious fast-flying Virginian passenger train. It was the first train in the C&O system to operate with a dining car and one of the first trains in the country to feature cars with enclosed vestibules, enabling safe passage from car to car. New York Central's railroad electric engine was on display, and not to be outdone, the Pennsylvania Railroad brought a 23-foot diameter section of its New York East River Tunnel. Many of the most popular attractions were the naval and military displays and events. Exhibitions on Civil War battles, including a recreation of the Battle of Hampton Roads, the first battle between ironclad warships, the USS Monitor and the CSS Virginia, originally the USS Merrimack, which had taken place within sight of Sewell's Point 40 years earlier. There were various demonstrations involving U.S. Army units, military school cadets, and all kinds of modern military hardware were on display. Warships from a number of foreign navies participated, and on opening day, President Roosevelt presided over a 16 battleship naval review. Straddling Raleigh Square on the main esplanade were two U.S. government buildings. Building A was the location of the Post Office Exposition Station. Mail collection was available at exposition hotels and locations throughout the grounds. This mail was processed at the Post Office Annex, where matter received exposition postmarks and cancels. Organizers of the exposition requested that the Post Office Department issue a set of commemorative stamps, as it had been done for other fairs since the 1893 World Columbian Exposition. Postmaster General George B. Cortelyou initially declined, stating that the Post Office no longer wished to issue special postage stamps commemorating exposition. Since the Columbian Exposition, the stamps per event had been in decline. For the 1905 Lewis and Clark Centennial Exposition held in Portland, Oregon, the Post Office only approved exposition slogan cancels, but did not issue stamps. When President Roosevelt expressed his desire that Jamestown stamps be issued, the Postmaster General quickly changed his mind and directed Arthur M. Travers, acting third assistant PMG, to order the stamps. On October 4th, 1906, Travers wrote this letter to the Secretary of the Treasury, requesting the Bureau of Engraving and Printing submit designs for a 1 and 2 cent denominations, stating, quote, the stamp should include the words Founding of Jamestown, 1607, and Commemorative Series of 1907. Travers enclosed designs suggested by the exposition authorities and various individuals. In early January of 1907, the Post Office approved the 2 cent stamp design depicting the landing of the settlers. But they rejected the 1 cent design illustrating the church tower ruins, or the remains of those ruins, where the House of Burgesses meeting had occurred. Though historic, the design was not quite stamp aesthetic. On February 20, 1907, Travers directed the Bureau to create a new 1 cent design with the image of Captain John Smith, the English soldier, explorer, and leader of the colony, whose strength of character and determination had helped overcome many problems, including attacks from Native Americans that almost destroyed the colony. On December 1607, Smith was captured and taken to the chief of the Powhatans. His release without harm has been attributed to the chief's daughter, Pocahontas, who, according to Smith, threw herself across his body at the minute of his execution and prevailed upon her father to safely conduct him to Jamestown. With the approval of the 1 cent Smith stamp design on February 28, 1907, the Jamestown stamp issue appeared to be settled. When several nations accepted Roosevelt's invitation to participate in an international naval flotilla, significant foreign sailors' mail was anticipated, so Cortelyou was directed to add a 5 cent denomination to cover the UPU foreign letter rate. On March 11, Cortelyou wrote to the Treasury Secretary, directing him to have the Bureau prepare a design for a 5 cent postage stamp, with the portrait of Pocahontas to be used as the stamp's subject. The Pocahontas stamp was approved March 19, a little over a month before the exposition opening on April 26. Claire Aubrey Houston, the Bureau's chief designer, was tasked to create the stamp designs. Houston, an illustrator and engraver, joined the Bureau in 1902. And over the next 21 years, he would design more than 40 postage stamps, including the Jamestown, the Louisiana Purchase commemoratives, the Washington Franklin issue, the 1922 through 31 regular issues, and the world-famous Curtis Jenny Airmail stamp. Illustrated are 2 of Houston's pencil essay drawings for the 1 and 5 cent Jamestown stamps. 6 bureau engravers produced the dies for the 3 stamps. The bureau stamp die cards record the type of work performed by each engraver, as well as information about die hardening and transfer rules. Interestingly, SA die proofs exist for the 1 and 5 cent stamp, but none are known for the 2 cent design. Third Assistant PMG A.W. Lashy signed off on the 2 cent die, while George von Elmeyer, newly appointed PMG on March 5th, approved the other 2 dies. A variety of posthumous die proofs exist for the issue, including a set proposed for but never made addendum to the 1903 Roosevelt presentation albums. One of 5 sets produced for the 1915 Panama Pacific Exposition display, a set pulled in 1933 for President Franklin Roosevelt's personal collection, and a similar uncut set presented to Philatelic luminary U.M. Southgate. There's also a forgery proof on card discovered in California and first reported by George Sloan in 1950. The genuine stamp image is a 1/4 millimeter taller and wider. In the forgery, Smith's head is slightly wider and his index finger, holding his sword, is exceptionally long. Numerous shading lines also differ. The origin and the reason for the existence of this forgery continue to be a complete mystery. Transfer rolls were made from the master die to create 200 subject plates. Each plate had 2 sets of bureau imprints and plate numbers on the top and the bottom. The printed sheets were severed horizontally on the middle guideline to produce 100 subject post office panes. A total of 9 1 cent, 30 2 cent, and 4 5 cent plates went to press from April 12th through October 3 of 1907. Production varieties include transfers and printers' initials, double transfers, plate scratches, and the perforations of the stamps are almost uniformly poor, causing mostly off-centered stamps. The March 25th Daily Postal Bulletin announced the new Jamestown stamps would be issued for sale during the term of the exposition from April 26 to November 30 of 1907, stating, quote, "They must not be sold to the public before or after this period." The Jamestown 1 and 2 cent stamps were officially released at the exposition on opening day of April 26. Illustrated as one of 10 known 1 cent first day uses and 3 known 2 cent first day uses. This piece with 2 copies of each stamp is the only known first day use with both denominations. 9 special postmarks and cancels were used on mail to and from the Exposition Station post office, including a registry postmark and slogan postmarks available at the post offices of Portsmouth, Norfolk, and Newport News. The Exposition duplex barrel hand stamp cancel, as shown, was used at the opening of the post office annex, and less than 40 examples are known. Pardon me while I take a drink. Incoming mail to the Exposition received this circular hand stamp. Less than 15 copies are known to survive. The earliest known use of the Exposition registry hand stamp cancel is May 6. However, 3 of the 9 known registered covers with this cancel are quite interesting. Illustrated as one of the 3, postmarked May 10, with all 3 of the Jamestown stamps paying the 8 cent registry fee on a 2 cent embossed envelope. The decision to add a 5 cent Jamestown stamp came almost 2 months after the production of the 1 and 2 cent denominations. so the 5-cent stamps were not available at the opening of the exposition. The earliest known use of the 5-cent is a pre-release May 8th postmark in Washington, D.C. This illustrated registry cover is one of the 3 dated May 10, the designated first day use of the 5-cent stamp from the exposition. This single known copy of an exposition straight line postmark from the U.S. Postal car was placed on the picture side of a postcard purportedly made by a RPO clerk, a Railway Post Office clerk. The card shows the U.S. government building post office annex. Unfortunately, the whereabouts of this card are unknown, certainly to me. The Post Office authorized the use of promotional postmark station cancelers for 3 cities located near Sewell's Point: Norfolk, Newport News, and Portsmouth, Virginia. The Norfolk 7-bar cancel with exposition and abbreviated STA for station. That slogan was applied by an International Postal Supply hand-powered machine, and less than 60 copies are believed to exist. An International Electric Power machine produced a similar cancel with the full exposition station slogan. It's the most common of the exposition-related cancels. There's also a Norfolk straight line cancel with a PO department, abbreviated X slogan. Little is known about this international hand-powered machine postmark. The 2 known examples appear to be souvenir handbags. A more interesting cancel with a wavy line slogan was used by all 3 cities. Norfolk was applied by an international hand-powered machine, while the cancel from Newport News was applied with an American Postal Machines Company electric-powered machine. Both slogans show the end year date 1907 reading downward. The Portsmouth slogan cancel was also applied with an American electric-powered machine, but the year-end date of 1907 on this cancel reads upward. When President Roosevelt agreed to federal financial support for the Jamestown Exposition, he insisted on a large showing of U.S. naval warships. The ships' hulls had all been painted white with contrasting buff upperworks and ornamented with fancy crests on the bows. All major naval powers of the world were invited to send ships. By mid-April, an international fleet comprising of 2 German armored cruisers, 2 Austro-Hungarian cruisers, 4 British cruisers, 3 Brazilian ships, a cruiser from Chile, and a cruiser from Argentina had assembled in Hampton Roads. Most of the U.S. Atlantic Fleet to participate in the review. This included 16 battleships, 10 torpedo boat destroyers, 5 armored cruisers, and 5 support vessels. It was the strongest U.S. fleet ever assembled, and the exposition visitors were treated to a grand display of naval power. At the close of the exposition, 4 additional battleships joined this great white fleet, with 12,000 seamen and officers left Hampton Roads on December 16th for the famous cruise around the world. Basic domestic rates in effect were postcards 1 cent, first class letters 2 cents, and variable rates depending upon the weight for second, third, and fourth class mail. The fee for registry service was required 8 cents in addition to the class rate. Illustrated here is a double weight registry cover, 4-cent postage plus 8 cents for registry fee.
I'm not hearing sound and I'm not recording sound.
Okay, come on up over to my things again. Record.
The 10-cent special.
What's on restrictions? Got an X on it. Chat. What?
The 10-cent special delivery fee mandated the use of a special delivery stamp until March 2nd of 1907, when 10 cents of ordinary stamps of any denomination could be used, and the mail was marked with the words special delivery or equivalent. The basic rates for UPU international mail were letters 5 cents per half ounce, but as a result of the 1906 Universal Postal Union Rome Convention, effective October 1 of 1907, the letter rate changed to 5 cents for the first full ounce and 3 cents for each additional full ounce. Here are uses of the Jamestown stamps for the UPU postcard, printed matter, and samples. Mail to and from U.S. possessions and territories were entitled to domestic rates. These are examples of mail to the Philippine Islands and the Canal Zone, and from Oklahoma Indian Territory and Puerto Rico. The June 8, 1872 Act of Congress permitted the Postmaster General, with the approval of the President, to conclude postal treaties covering rates of postage on mail between the United States and foreign countries. By 1907, postal treaties for domestic rates existed between the United States and Canada, Mexico, and Cuba. The Shanghai Postal Agency, founded on June 10 of 1867, operated in cooperation with the Chinese Imperial Post Office. U.S. domestic rates applied on all mail classes passing between the U.S. and Shanghai and a few local cities. This 1 cent postal card to Shanghai did actually not require the 2 cent UPU rate, so using the additional 1 cent Jamestown was not necessary, and thus the card was overpaid by a penny. The transportation of domestic and foreign mails was governed by Post Office Division responsibility. These divisions included rural free delivery, railway mail service, sea post offices, and naval post offices, all of which can be identified by postal markings. Additional transport facilities were provided by consular and commercial forwarding services. The exposition closed on November 30th of 1907, and the Jamestown commemorative stamps were no longer to be sold. By year end, however, the stamps were still on hand at many local post offices. So on January 23 of the following year, 1908, a notice in the Daily Postal Bulletin authorized the continued sale of the stamps until supplies were exhausted, and that requests for additional stamps from the department's limited supply would be honored. Interestingly, the directive stated, quote, "These stamps should not, however, be forced upon purchasers who prefer the regular issue." Commercial use of the Jamestown stamps after the exposition is exemplified by this 1908 September 22 cover from Washington, D.C. One of the more curious Jamestown philatelic items is this exposition slogan cancel from Boston. It's actually a fabrication and not a genuine cover postmarked in Boston. When the American Postal Machine Company dissolved in 1922, access to various dies, including the Newport News Jamestown slogan cancel, were obtained, but only the date die the date dies available were used at the Boston Post Office. All 6 recorded fabricated Jamestown fantasies are dated May 10 of 1907, and all are on envelopes of the T.W. Norman Company, a Boston art dealer. A postscript on June 10 of 1957, a single 3 cent stamp was issued to commemorate both the 300th anniversary of the Jamestown settlement and the International Naval Review, quote, called Freedom of the Seas. And celebrating the 400th anniversary of the Jamestown founding, the USPS produced a triangle stamp issued as a double-sided pane of 20 with an illustrated folio. But I have to leave that story for another time and for someone else. hope you enjoyed. I'll be more than happy to take any questions.
Very good. Thank you very much, Roger. Very interesting. What I liked is that, they're supposed to go off sale and then they're stuck with them. Well, we can put them on sale again. It just reminds me of standard operating procedures. There was a slide there near the end. It had a triangle in the corner card with, say, United States, and it looked like it had a pyramid in it. I was wondering, yeah, a couple before that. There, what is that?
Let's see if we can, bear with me 1 second, see if we can possibly, oh, it didn't work. Hold on a second. We can find this, bear with me. Can you see that blow up?
Okay, yeah.
All right, hold on a second. So it says H.F. Dunkhurst, 100. It's obviously
Advertising.
it's an advertising. Yeah,
Mhm.
interesting.
Interesting. When you see the pyramid on something on one of American covers, you got to wonder what that is. But it's a nice strike. I like it.
I guess if we did a little bit of a Google search on H.F. Dunkhurst, maybe we'd find something.
Yeah, I like that. Very good.
Actually, I have 2 other items that I want to bring to your attention. This postal card actually will be a feature article in the United States Stamp Society, I believe in September. If you'll know, I actually purchased this within this past year. It was in a sale. Normally, I would not be interested in a Jamestown cover, or in this particular case, a card that was dated in 1919 or 1918. A little bit out of its normal series, but I was intrigued because on the left-hand side, as you can see, it says censored U.S. Department of Justice, Hot Springs, North Carolina. Well, I'll just say that this has to do with World War I, and I'll let you read the article if you're so interested. It turned out that when war first broke out, the United States was not at war with Germany, but there were many German freight and a few passenger ships that were on the east coast of the United States, and they were afraid to sail into waters, fearing that the British would sink them. So the passengers, crew, etc., were allowed to freely roam the United States until we declared war in 1917 against Germany, in which case they were all rounded up and put into internment camps. And the most important camp was in Hot Springs, North Carolina. And this is how this card came about, but I won't go into further detail. Another interesting card, cover. This cover I do not own. I will not own in this lifetime, because although it is probably the greatest of all Jamestown covers, the reality of it is that it contains 3 of the famous Shermack Type 3 4-cent stamps. The cover is worth several hundreds of thousands of dollars, and I can live without it. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you. I met a young man and talked to him about stamp collecting, and he said, yeah, I collect stamps. And, I asked him about it. He didn't own a stamp. Never been to a stamp show, but he had it all on his phone. He took clippings from the different, websites and things, Smithsonian and all that, and he made his own virtual album. So now you have one like that for your cover, with those Shermacks. That's great. That's neat. Okay, folks, questions.